Good morning and welcome to our thought for the day. I am the Reverend Mark Fuller and it's wonderful to be with you this morning just to share a few thoughts on this passage from Luke's Gospel that I'm about to read. From Luke chapter 8, beginning at verse 22. So one day he got into a boat with his disciples and said to them, "Let's go across to the other side of the lake." So they put out, and while they were sailing, he fell asleep. A gale swept down on the lake and the boat was filling with water, and they were in danger. They went to him and woke him up, shouting, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And he woke up and rebuked the wind and the raging waves. They ceased, and there was calm. He said to them, "Where is your faith?" They were afraid and amazed and said to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him?" It may seem slightly strange for me to say this, but one of the things that I struggle most with in my own faith life is answered prayer. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, we celebrate when God hears and answers our prayers. Giving thanks for what God is doing in the world and in us is a key part of what Christians do. But for me, it does raise a question. If God does answer some prayers, why does he not answer others? Why do some prayers seemingly go unheard? Maybe you've had an experience of praying for somebody and they got healed. Maybe you prayed for someone else and they didn't get healed, at least not in the way that you might have hoped. We might pray for God to protect us from the storms of life, and at times there's God present and active, whereas at other times God can seem passive or even asleep. Is it the way we say our prayers? Are some prayers just more faithful than others? Now that brings me to the story that I just read from Luke's Gospel, that story of Jesus calming the storm. There's a question that Jesus asks in that story that, I'll be honest, I've always found difficult. Jesus says to his disciples, who've just had that experience of being helplessly at the mercy of the elements, "Where is your faith?" he asks them. Now, I think at one level, that's quite a harsh question. Look, we know the disciples often fall short. We know they often make silly mistakes. But I think here their actions are perfectly appropriate. I mean, it must have been some storm that those experienced fishermen who would have known that lake so well, that they found it so terrifying. I mean, fear at that moment seems entirely correct, as does waking Jesus up to help them. We all at some point or another go through those experiences, don't we, where we perhaps feel helpless, like we are in over our heads, times when it feels as though the skills that have perhaps served us at previous points in our lives, they don't quite cut it for the situation that is before us. Maybe we've had times when we felt like we've been at the mercy of forces out of our control. At times like that, you may have uttered similar prayers, similar words to those of the disciples. "God, wake up, help, I'm in trouble." What if Jesus' question to his disciples on the lake? What if it wasn't born out of irritation, but out of grace? Not a callous response to a situation of genuine terror, but a question that must continue to challenge and inspire the discipleship of the disciples, as indeed it must continue to challenge and inspire our discipleship today. Because as Luke's Gospel unfolds, those disciples will face challenging times ahead, just as of course we do today. There are storms in our lives sometimes, aren't there? I don't know what storms you faced. I don't know what storms you might be facing right now. And I wonder how you hear that question. Where is your faith? And what if that question isn't, or our answer to that question isn't revealed in us getting our own way? If only we prayed the right prayer in the right way, that the storms would pass. Now, we know the storms come, and sometimes those storms linger for a long time. And being a Christian doesn't mean that we won't bear them, or that they will indeed be any easier to bear. What if faith is facing the storms, going through them, but doing so in the assurance that God is with us, ever drawing us closer to himself, even if we sometimes question why the one who commands the wind and the waves doesn't always calm our storms when we ask. Amen.